Hello, my name is Oscar. I study at the Pan American University of Puerto in the Faculty of Education and Humanities School of Modern Languages. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the history of contemporary literature. So, first, we should begin by narrowing down what do we mean when we talk about contemporary literature. So, contemporary literature generally refers to literary works that were produced from the late 19th century to the present day. But really, that distinction is not the whole the whole thing that characterizes contemporary literature, because from um, from the art perspective, this this time period for literature meant a conscious break from the forms, the themes, and the values of traditional literature, especially the classic realism of the 19th century models. So, a few general characteristics of contemporary literature are, as I said, a break from traditional forms, also an exploration of subjectivity, fragmentation and ambiguity, questioning of truth and reality, thematic and formal diversity, and finally, critical, critic, or existential engagement, meaning with works that address social or political or philosophical concerns. Now, why is contemporary literature the way it is? So, as all the arts and all the history of arts is, they are inevitably entangled with our human history, right? So, as we said, it is usually considered contemporary literature if it's a work created from the late 19th century to the present day. So this was a period of human history that was very, very agitated, to say the least. It was a time of history that was shaped by major historical, social, technological, and cultural changes, to mention a few of them: world wars, industrialization, urbanization, ideological crisis, globalization, and also the digital revolution. So this time period was packed with changes, and that is why we see that characterization of the works that make up contemporary literature. So making a timeline, to we could signal some sections to better understand the different characteristics of the works within the contemporary literature timeline. So let's begin by the works that were made in the late 19th century. So let's say, what was the main characteristic of said works during that section of the timeline, and also a relevant work that we can name that is representative of those characteristics. So in the late 19th century, there was a crisis of realism and the rise of literary modernity. So the this period was mainly characterized by a loss of confidence in objective representation, and there was a growing interest in exploring subjectivity. As we said, that is one of the main characteristics, and it started all the way back in the late 19th century. So subjective perception and psychological depths. So we we could name the work of Henry James, The Portrait of a Lady, to as a representative of this section of the timeline. Next up, we have the early 20th century. And we see that in this section of the timeline, the main trait is experimentation. So the literature here is marked by a radical formal innovation and the break from literary conventions. So authors began to experiment with fragmented structures, nonlinear time, and interior monologue. So we could name the work of Virginia Woolf, Mrs. Dalloway, from 1925. Then it came the interwar period from roughly 1930 to 1945. So this was deeply marked by the questioning of meaning. This stage reflects the impact of World War One, the economic collapse, and political instability. So there was a disenchantment with life that was expressed through literature, and feelings of anxiety and a growing sense of absurd, and of course the questioning of moral and social values. So we could name the work of Albert Camus, The Stranger, from 1942. So moving on, we have the post-war period, roughly from 1945 to 1960, and this period was marked by existentialism. So in the aftermath of now World War II, the literature became focused on human responsibility, freedom, guilt, and ethical choice. So, moral responsibility. Writers explore how meaning can be constructed in a world that was marked by destruction and uncertainty. In this period, we could again name Albert Camus with The Plague from 1947. Then we have from the section between 1960 to 1970s. And this was very interesting, was the Latin American boom and narrative innovation. So this period again was characterized by a bold experimentation, and some authors blended history with myth and the fantastic, but also grounded in political and social realities. So here, Latin American literature gains international prominence. And what better example that 100 days, 100 years of solitude from Gabriel Garcia Marquez in 1977. And we're almost catching up with the present day. The next section that we could make is from the 1980s to the 1990s, which was marked by postmodernism. And the fragmentation of meaning. So the postmodern literature questions the possibility of absolute truth. So it is marked by the irony, by metafiction, and the genre hybridity. So the blurring of lines between fiction and reflection. Here we see an example of this time is The Name of the Rose, 1980, from Umberto Eco. Then, finally, we have from the section of the 21st century, from the 2000s to our present day, which is a period marked by globalization, by technology, and by new forms of identity. So, the contemporary literature in this section reflects precisely that globalization, a world that is global and that is digital, addressing themes like memory and identity and technology, and also existential uncertainty again. So we see it as a recurrent theme through all of contemporary literature. So, and again, this is combined with experimental techniques and accessible narrative forms. One work that we could name for this section is The Road from 2006 of Cormac McCarthy. So, in conclusion, contemporary literature, it is not a single movement, but instead a reflection of the expression of the feelings and the themes that were a consequence of our human history, that in particular in this time period was very, very charged with destructive and very complex events and times. So the literature became a form to express all of those feelings and ideas, and as it has in the past and will continue to do into the future. Well, so I hope you like this recap of contemporary literature and enjoy today's video. Thank you for joining me today, and I will see you on the next one. Goodbye for now.